Hello to everyone who's just joined us. Today we're talking all things data washing at CreditorWatch for the most recent instalment of the CreditorWatch webinar processes that we have quite often. Just a bit of a change in presenter today. I am Matt Jackson, the National Sales Manager at CreditorWatch. I do some important things around the office, mainly maintaining the beer and keg, the beer tap and keg that we have at our CreditorWatch head office in Sydney. I regularly get beaten in table tennis by some of the superstars that work for CreditorWatch, and I also am the head of the sales team, both our online and corporate sales team, which you may or may not have had an interaction with previously. I love traveling. The last place I've been to was Bali earlier this year. The next place I'm off to in October is Hawaii, but my favourite place I've been is Formentera, a small island just off the coast of Ibiza in Spain. It's absolutely beautiful, and I encourage you to go if you haven't been. Enough about me. Today we're talking about data washing, and this is a really broad topic that we cover here at CreditorWatch. There's lots of different aspects to it, so we're going to really break that down for you. We're going to look at what data washing is. Why do people data wash, or why do companies use this information? Where the information comes from, what information you can actually get from a data wash, the process, how you get it kicked off and what is required. And then we're looking at some examples of the data washing that we provide. It's not just providing raw information back. We now also provide a more in-depth analysis around your customer base and the data that you've provided, which can provide you and your credit team some real insights into who you're dealing with and how best to deal with them in the future. So first of all, what is data washing? Well, data washing is obviously that really broad topic, and it's all about enriching and validating the information that you currently have. It can really fill in some gaps that you might have. It provides you some new information that you may never have had, but it also can just be really valuable to confirm the information that you do have is correct. If you're gathering data, which you do on a daily basis through things like new credit applications, sales, etc., that information's great, but it dates extremely quickly. So the data washing is a really good way to update and validate, check, and confirm that information that you currently have on your CRM, on your accounting software, wherever you store that data. So there's a number of reasons why people use data washing. Data washing can be, I guess, categorized into three probably main areas that I deal with. First of all, it's all about account review. So that might be an internal review that you need to do to update your information to make sure it's all correct. You might need to do it for a trade credit insurance perspective, where you have to do an annual wash or an annual review in order to keep your policy accurate and up to date. Or it could be something such as a PPSR wash. So this is becoming more and more popular. So checking the registrations that you currently have and the entities that you've registered against are still active and current. This is going to be extremely important as we head towards the end of the year, as it's the 7-year renewal date for all of the original PPSR registrations that were done. So there's going to be a significant amount of data washing and renewal work need to be done for this. So if you're one of the entities that started PPSR registrations when the legislation kicked off, that's coming up quickly. 7 years has absolutely flown, but it's coming up quickly in December and January for most of you. So this is a really good time to start washing that data to make sure you're prepared to start renewing those registrations when they begin to lapse. The other reason why people data wash is for due diligence. So if they're purchasing a new customer or a company, or if you've just bought another company as a business and as a credit manager, you've inherited a significantly increased number of data through a new ledger. Quite often the data that you buy from another business isn't up to the same scratch as what you hold in your own house. And data washing is a really good way to get a quick snapshot of who you're dealing with, how many crossover customers there are, or even just simply identify the ABNs or the ACNs of the entities that they haven't been keeping on their records, for example. The other reason people do it is to improve their own data. So that could be simply validating an ABN or an ACN. Quite often we get projects when people start to implement new systems into their business. So that might be a new CRM. So you might be putting Salesforce or some type of CRM system into your business. Or it could also be if you're putting a new accounting package, Oracle, SAP, JD Edwards, even the medium-sized accounting software packages like Xero, MYB, Reckon, those type of packages. It's really important that you put in clean data into that. There's no point just transferring legacy data and hoping that it validates and matches. You really just want to it's a good time to start a new clean slate, move all that good, fresh, new information over, and leave all the problems of the previous system behind, and all the entities that don't have an ABN, etc. You can quickly catch up and validate when you move over to the new platform. Some benefits of data washing. It's really all about knowing exactly who you're dealing with. When you take on a new customer, that customer might be great today, and it's this, you order a credit report. That report's a snapshot in time that tells you who they are, how they've been in the past, and whether you want to do business with them. But more often than not, if you signed up someone 4 or 5 years ago as a new customer, the likelihood that that business has changed in that time is extremely high. So monitoring is a really big part of this, but also data washing that information regularly to update your CRM is critical. We see companies, the frequency of data washing change. Some people do it every couple of months, 3 months. Some people do an annual review or every 2 years. It depends on your customer base and how quickly it changes, I would suggest. But I really recommend that data washing is a good way to get that updated snapshot of who you're dealing with, and closing old accounts or people who have might changed ABNs or haven't traded with you in 9 or 12 months. It's important to keep that information fresh and active, because if you don't, that's when people pop back up out of the blue, they order a big order and then they disappear. And that's those bad debts that tend to creep up without us knowing, without any early warning signs, those type of people that sting the bottom line. It's a great, as I mentioned before, it's that great way to refresh that PPSR list. The renewal date's coming up in December, January, so it's a really good way to update all that information. When you're buying a business, it's really good to know what you're getting yourself into, or if you've purchased a business, what you've got yourself into. Very rarely do those customers have the same data practices as what you do, so it's a good way to catch up all of that. So when we're looking at the sources of data, this is important because it's where the information from the data wash is drawn upon. When we do validation data washes, it's really like buying a credit report on all of your companies and putting it into an easy-to-use spreadsheet for you. So the reason we do that, it can be implemented or imported straight into your accounting software and update all that information. But the sources of data come from both government sources and proprietary information from CreditorWatch. The important thing to note with CreditorWatch data washes is that all the information is live and pinged when we do the data wash. We don't use cached information or old information that we just store in our bureau. We actually actively go out to all the government registries and pull the information back, so you know you're getting the most up-to-date, accurate information. So to do some basic validation data washes, we typically use, we do use ASIC and the Australian Business Registry, and that will help you validate your ABN and ACN information. It'll also let you know the company status, how long they've been operating. If we have on-file information or you would like to refresh an ASIC extract, you can get director information pulled through also. So there's a really rich wealth of knowledge that comes from those government databases. Unfortunately, it's not as good as some countries like the UK, where they have a ton more information, but in Australia, that information is pretty much as good as it gets. And because we ping that information live, you know it's 100% up to date. People then actually start to build, I guess, a risk profile by appending adverse information. So the things you can add here are defaults, which are unique to CreditorWatch. They come from our 50,000 members, all who have the ability to put the black marks on a credit record. And that really tells you how they pay their bills and if they haven't been paying someone in a while. Defaults are a really good warning sign that someone might be having cash flow problems. And if you see multiple defaults on a profile, it's a pretty good indicator that they're having cash flow problems. We find that anyone with a default is 50% likely to go into administration within 18 months of that default being registered. So pretty staggering number there. Another source of adverse information that we can append is mercantile inquiries. So mercantile inquiries come from close to 200 debt collectors that use CreditorWatch, and they use that for pre-litigation work. So when they are about to sue an entity, they purchase an ASIC extract on someone, and for our members and through the DataWash, it provides an early warning sign that they're about to be taken to court. So if you see a mercantile inquiry through the DataWash or on a credit profile, it's all about trying to get in, get your money, and get out before it goes through that court process. And the last piece of adverse information that comes through is those court actions. So that's when a court action is raised, a statement of claim has gone through the courts, and a judgment has been made. And that means that legally, in the eyes of the court, that company owes the money, and that is done at the magistrate level and above. So court actions are a great warning sign that someone's really having some cash flow problems as well. The other thing that we can append is insolvency notices. So this is extremely important. This really goes along with our status, which comes from ASIC and ABR. So the things you're looking for here is deregistered ABNs, cancelled ACNs, entities that are in strike-off action, which basically means if they don't comply with ASIC regulation, they'll be struck off or deregistered in 45 days. And if a company has gone into administration, those insolvency notices come through also. So that means that the company that you have an ABN on and you might be dealing with has either changed an ABN or the company has closed and has been cancelled. Typically what we find is between 5 and 15% of a ledger has adverse information, including insolvency notices that you didn't know about. So there is quite often a number of surprises, no matter how clean you think your database is. The other thing you can append, and this starts to get into more predictive information, is our credit scores. So we have 2 credit scores. One's a credit worthiness score, and it combines payment and risk information and basically tells you, do you want to do business with this entity? So the reason people append this is you can grab a score today, but you can also grab a score over the last 3 or 12 months. So that allows you to paint a picture of whether that entity is getting better or worse over time. So appending scores over time gives you a good indicator of, is it entity getting better? In which case you might want to extend more credit to, let your sales reps know, and they might want to sell some additional products to. Or if it's getting worse, you might want to move them to COD. You might want to chase up the outstanding amount that is currently with them. The payment score that we have is called our payment predictor, and that purely just tells you how that company pays its bills. The way that we populate this information comes from 2 sources, and that is our corporate trade program, which is where large corporate entities provide their age trial balance information. So basically a list of accounts and how old the money is that is owed to them. And they provide that on a monthly basis. That information is extremely valuable, and it lets us know in bulk how people are paying corporates. The problem with that information is that it is only contributed every 30 days. So it's only contributed once a month. And also it's being contributed by the best payers in Australia. So those large businesses, they're the key suppliers to most companies, and it really paints probably a favourable picture of how people pay their bills. And that's why we decided to incorporate a secondary source of payment information, and that's from our Xero and MYOB integrations. So Xero and MYOB are the 2 biggest accounting software packages used by small businesses. And this information is extremely important. It not only allows us access to the payment information of small businesses, which is by far the most predictive, it also allows us to access this information every 15 minutes. So rather than getting corporate information and purely basing payment scores off 30-day cycle, we're able to much more accurately predict how people pay their bills by splicing in this small business information, because it's delivered so much more regularly than that corporate information. So we find with our payment score, although not available on all entities, the ones that do have it, and we have over 7.5 million lines of trade within the last 12 months which contribute to this information, it really does paint a really nice picture of how people do pay their bills. And it might not be a matter of saying we're not going to deal with them anymore. You might want to build an additional margin in because you know they're going to pay you late, but also it's a good way to look for trends. Has their payment terms been creeping out over the last 3 or 4 months, which is a huge indicator that they're having cash flow problems. So that's all the sources of information, and now we're just going to look at how you append this information and what it looks like. So the most basic data wash is all about just validating the information you have. So you would provide a list, and we can let you know if the ABN and ACN, legal entity name, etc. is valid and still current. It also really importantly shows you the entity status. So is it registered, deregistered, strike-off action, insolvency, and tells you whether you should be continuing to deal with that person. What we often find is people do have ABNs that are still trading with them hunky-dory, but they are currently deregistered. And usually this is just because the entity has created a new company or they've changed their ABN details. You might still be dealing with the same contact. It's just a really good prompt for you to get a new credit application and make sure you have that contract with the right entity, because at the end of the day, if that goes bad and you're dealing with the incorrect ABN, you don't have much recourse, unfortunately. And then you can start to add some additional value through our data washing, and that's where we start to splice in some more information. So you can also gather director information, so names, date of births, and addresses. This is really handy if you've got director's guarantees or personal guarantees. You can ensure the person that signed your guarantee is still a part of the business. You can also look at the shareholding structure. So who has a shareholding in the business or the entity, and see if it's another company, maybe do a credit check on them as well, or if it's purely the individual, which is the director. You can also append that adverse information, which gives you an idea of people who might be having some cash flow problems. You can apply the credit scores, which really tell you, do you want to be doing business with them, or hopefully identify people that are having cash flow problems. We can then also do something called a name match. We understand that not all of your data is perfect, and sometimes you don't have an ABN or an ACM. So what we can do, based on a company name and locality that you provide, we can try and match an ABN or an ACN. We run it through an algorithm that looks at a percentage of accuracy, and then we append that information. So it's a good way to do a mass cleanup of your accounts if they are not 100% accurate in terms of that ABN or ACN information. And then also there's that on file or refreshed ASIC information. So with all this information, the good news is that it's customizable to what you really require, but there's a whole host of information that can be used for many different reasons within your business. So the more data that you're basically appending, the richer insight you'll basically get from the data wash, but it can go from a simple validation right to an in-depth analysis. So what's the process of a data wash? First of all, you have to export that information from your system. So you can put that into a CSV file. Typically it comes straight from an accounting package, CRM or ERP system. Most ERPs have a dump function now, which can gather most of the information. One of the problems we do come across is you can't export ABNs or ACNs. Obviously, we ideally want that information because then we can match much more accurately. But if you can't get that, don't forget we've got that name match function, which allows you to basically try and match the ABN and ACN to the names that we have. So that's export. So it's getting the information from your system. The next is identify. So it's all about identifying what information you want and identifying the right entities. So we run that through our bureau and validate all that basic information for you. Next is all about enhancing the information. So what additional things would you like to append to the information, and how are you going to use it in your business when you get it back? And then finally, it's all about analyzing. So CreditorWatch providing some additional insights into that data. We provide that back in two ways. One's through a CSV file, which allows you to upload all this information back into your ERP or CRM. But we can also provide a PDF which explains some insights around your data. So it's all about looking a bit into where your best customers are, what type of penetration do you have in certain areas, and yeah, providing some insights for your business to grow and use internally. So the big question, what's the cost of a data wash? And unfortunately, it really does depend on two things. It depends on the volume, so how many entities you'd like to wash, and also what information you would like to append. So the price ranges from a couple of cents for validation in bulk right up to a couple of dollars for things that are more complex like scores, etc. One thing to note that's really regular, if you want to do, really important, is if you do this on a regular basis, we can offer subscriptions to help manage the cost over the year. So if you want to do this once every 3 or 4 months, for example, we can split an annual cost and invoice every time that additional report is purchased. And it allows you to just get a better, cleaner picture of who you're dealing with throughout the year. So rather than just waiting once a year and having to do a whole heap of work on those customers to update all that information, chipping away at it over the year is a really good way to make sure that's up to date and important. So I'm just going to show you some slides of the example PDF that we provide back. So all the information comes back in that CSV file, which is essentially an Excel file that you can upload. But then we provide some additional insights and some commentary around the data that you've provided and the data that we also have appended to the information. So we have a credit analyst that runs through the information. They highlight some statistics around the data, and that's really, you don't have to provide all this information. We get it from ASIC, the Australian Business Registry, and our adverse information, and we filter it down. So we look at things like how many ABNs you provided, how many unique customers there are, where the majority of them are located. We can put it into states, etc. And yeah, it's some good insight into the information that you provide. We also then look at data clusters. So pooling information together, it looks at who your biggest customers are, the biggest states that you have penetration in, the type of entities you're dealing with, which is really important to making sure that the number of trusts and trustees match. We also know that sole traders, trusts and partnerships are significantly more risky to deal with than public and private companies. So it helps you identify the risk of your portfolio and also the dollar values associated with it. We know that sole trader, trust and partnership market is extremely important to corporates. They don't represent the biggest dollar value, but they do represent potentially the highest risk. A lot of little debts add up pretty quickly, and losing one is not going to hit the bottom line like a top 10 customer, but it does significantly impact your collections and your DSO. We know those sole traders are the hardest to collect off. They're transient. They don't have a proper credit process. They're probably doing the accounts at 6 or 7 p.m. when they get home. So getting all this information back really allows you to properly map what your DSO should be like and how it's been improving over time. Also looking at our matching strategy. So this is around if we do name match, what the accuracy of it is like. The most accurate way to match obviously is ABN and ACN. We can also then append a full address, which is really helpful, and that's a registered address and also a trading address in some instances. And then we can look at also the ones that were name matched, so the name, state and postcode that you've provided and the accuracy of that. The reports are broken down into nice graphs. They're really good for CFOs, FCs, or business owners, or even if you just wanted to use them internally in your team. It does provide a lot of insight for board meetings, etc. We can pull all the ASIC information, the ABR information, and this gives some good insights into who you're dealing with and how best to manage them in the future. And uniquely, one thing that CreditorWatch does is provide scores on unincorporated entities, so sole traders, trusts, and partnerships. So that means we can lay the same score over all entities that you've put into your into the DataWash, and it helps you rank the risk based on the type of entities you're dealing with and also who you're dealing with on a monetary value. So just a really quick recap of the information that we've covered today. The DataWash is a really good way to update information that you have. It's a really good way of getting ready for the PPSR renewal date, which is coming up. Or if for trade credit purposes, you're required to do an annual wash. Rather than buying reports individually, we can do this in bulk and save you a huge time. It's great for when you're buying new businesses or if you've been forced to take over a new ledger, for example. Or simply just a great tool for CFOs or an annual portfolio review, which allows you to give some basic insights into your business. So one thing that we'll just look at now is what do you need to provide? Now, it's pretty easy. Obviously, during that exporting stage, this is where we get the information. So something that's really a must-have is your internal customer number, because the ABN and ACN that you have on file might not be the one that we end up being able to match or validate, especially if we're doing name matches. So that's important. That allows us to connect it back to your records. Entity name is obviously critical. It does help if you've got a legal entity name or a trading name, but we can match off both. And an ACN or an ABN, if available, increases the accuracy of the data wash significantly. The other nice to haves, which allow us to do name matching, is address, state, and postcode. That really allows us to ping the entity name and the locality and come back with a good result. What we can also do too for further analysis is add your age trial balance information and then segment the data. So what that means is when you provide this information, if you provide an ATB with it, we can map that over time. We can also see how your receivables are tracking, whether they're getting better or worse, whether there's more in 30 and 60 day than there were 6 or 12 months ago. And that's the way you really want to trend as a business, to try and get as much in the door as soon as possible. So that provides significant additional insight into the data wash information that is provided. I'm just going to run a quick poll now, and it's just around data washing. So if you've done a data wash in the last 12 months, yay or nay, please click that on the screen now. It'll only take, will take 1 or 2 minutes for you to get the answers. This just gives us a good indication of if you've done one previously. Because data washing traditionally hasn't been done that much because it's been so expensive, but we really focus on providing value for money and with the insights that we have through CreditorWatch, but also importantly turning that around in a really, really quick time so you can get that information back as soon as possible. Okay, I'm just going to close that now and show the results. So it seems over half of you have never done one before, but I'm assuming potentially considering it if you're sitting in this session or just finding a little bit more about it. A number of you have done them previously and some don't think it's relevant. Cool. So one of the common things that I get from credit managers that I get to go see is that we actually don't have the data or we can't export it out of our system. And look, fear not, there is a really good product that we have called Clean Easy, which helps you do this. Now, this is used for a number of facets. So first of all, it's if you've got really old information or you've taken over a new company and they don't have any ABN or ACN information, rather than just trying to match that, you can actually get it from the horse's mouth in terms of that customer yourself. And the way that we do that is through this product called Clean Easy. And essentially what it is, it's an online form that we would email out to those customers. It's fully branded in your brand name. It has no mention of CreditorWatch whatsoever. And it allows them to update any information that you do have that's incorrect. So we pre-fill the form with the information that you do have, and they can change that if it's incorrect. But most importantly, it validates all the information as well. So if you don't have an ABN and they put one in, it'll actually make sure it's a valid ABN registered at the Australian Business Registry. And if there's an ACN associated with it, it'll pull that information direct from ASIC. So this is a really good way to communicate with your customers and get this information. The reason we pre-fill the information, it's not that email that's like, oh, hi, can we update our customer details? It's saying, this is the information that we have on you. Do you mind just helping us update that and make it more accurate so we can service you better as a customer? So we find that with this system, the return rate is really high because it's done on the computer and someone can do it at their desk. They don't have to print off a form and fax it back. They're not getting a letter which they have to then repost back, even if you provide a return to sender form. So the return rate is really, really high. The huge benefit is that when it validates all the information, we collate it in a CSV or Excel file, and then you can basically upload it straight back into your system. So it has a huge time saver for you. You don't have to get someone to go through those emails. You don't have to get someone to go through those letters that are returned when you're trying to update customer information and put it into your system manually. You should be able to do that all in one swoop, which is really handy. It's also a really good opportunity for you to get new terms and conditions signed or electronically signed, a privacy policy updated, or just simply have a really good communication and a customer service piece with these customers. So keep in mind Clean Easy if you have purchased a business recently or you want to update your customer information. It's a good way to do it in bulk in a really good, cool, professional way that's good way to communicate with your customers. Well, thanks so much for listening in today. I hope I provided some insight and it was valuable to you. You can get in contact with us a couple of ways. First of all, give us a buzz. The number's up there, 81882025, and that's a Sydney number, 02. You can simply email us at admin@creditorwatch.com.au, and we're more than happy to provide quotes or look at your data and see what information we might be able to append and what insights we potentially can provide. Don't forget, there's always upcoming webinars at CreditorWatch, so please go to creditorwatch.com.au/webinars, and it will allow you to see the next topics that are being covered and allow you to join those, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Once again, I'm Matt Jackson, and I look forward to speaking to you all or presenting to you in the near future. Thank you and have a great day.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.